Greetings, folks. I'm going to show Jeff a picture of the actress that played Lucy. There she is. I think it's Nina Mashalik. There she is. Right then. And so we're going to look at this episode. And here are the details. Ooh, is that going to crash? No, hopefully not. So I'm going to read this out. I think I've read this before, but sometimes the sentences are a bit mangled, so I'll give it my best go. Kappatoo, who is used to everybody being equal in his time, gets into an argument with Simon's mum when she asks him to do the dishes. He then learns that Tracy is rooting for Gregory in the school in the PTA pupil elections. Kappatoo uses his wristband to cause a whirlwind on the stairs, trapping Gregory and blowing most of his clothes off. Gregory goes to the drama department to find some new clothes to wear, but because of this and a passionate and emotional speech Kappatoo gives about the future, Gregory loses the election to Simon. That evening, as Kappatoo and Simon's family are having dinner, Tracy pops by and asks Simon to come over to her place that evening. That's not accurate. He asked, sort of, like after he asked if he could take her out, though. Like, there's some details missed out. Kappatoo is happy that he has improved Simon's life as part of the bargain. No, it's not. He's just happy for himself, mostly. But feels a bit sorry for Simon being stuck in his time as he believes is boring. Yeah, sort of. Meanwhile, Simon is asked by Mufor what period of history he is most interested in, but will not say why, as it is a surprise. The two are approached by Sigma 6, who advises Simon that he knows how he cheated, and he doesn't have long until he proves it. Simon then attends a surprise birthday party hosted by Mufor with a 20th century theme, unaware that Sigma 6 has acquired a time belt and is heading back to 1990 to bring Kappatoo back and expose them both. So, over to you, Jeff.
I'm going to try to remember, because I didn't comment while I was watching it. I was trying to save it for the review, but I'm trying to remember the things that popped into my head because, we talked before about stuff in sci-fi type shows where you kind of have those oh come on moments where they do something that's a little bit ridiculous, even within the context of a fantasy universe, obviously, where there are things that they can make up. They still sort of establish things, and I thought this show did a good job of that in the first several episodes. And in the last couple, they've maybe gone out the window a little bit, and especially in this one where we had, previously the wristband is shown to do things like freeze time or speed things up or slow them down and stuff, and even, I guess, to have some sort of teleportation powers. So I don't know why I feel that way, but I still feel like the idea of like him having the ability to change the fuel inside the motorbike just seems like a little bit more like, would just have a magic trick as opposed to technology. It just seems like that would be, obviously, I guess they justified it somehow thinking, there's some sort of matter transference that can occur to change this fuel. But it really seems like overall that I would almost think that this one was written by somebody else, because it seemed like they kind of dumbed it down from the previous. And again, I don't know whether or not, that's something where I don't know. I know in American TV, I would blame the network and say they probably told them that it was too smart and they needed to make it more slapstick and stuff, because, it's not like they haven't had moments like that in the previous episodes, but it seemed like this one was more sitcom-ish and I would say more goofy sitcom-ish, because obviously there are sitcoms that are a little bit more. I don't know. Smart's not the right word, but I can't really think of a good word.
Yeah.
You know, this one was just a little bit sillier. It seemed more like something that would have been on Nickelodeon as opposed to, something that was trying to be a little bit more sophisticated in some way. Like I don't even like using that word, but yeah, that's all I can really think of on that. But I think there were a couple other times. Yeah, just the stuff, the random thing like, oh, we're going to have a whirlwind to blow his clothes off. That reminded me specifically of the movie Zapped from back in the early 80s, because when Scott Baio's character has this powers because he gets blasted in some weird lab experiment. So he has the ability to sort of do telekinetic things, including removing people's clothing. So that's what it reminded me of. So yeah, I would say overall, like this one would just seem like goofier and kind of all over the place, like unfocused.
Really?
Yeah, there were certain. There was a few things that they obviously continued from the previous episodes, but in general, it was more as like they sort of restarted in some ways. Like I don't recall them ever mentioning the election before this episode. So they came up with that. Also, on like they have the speeches, which presumably would be what you would do before the voting, and then the teacher says, "Oh, I'm going to go count the votes." When were they voting?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
where?
that was a bit of an error. That was a bit of an error for me.
Like
Yeah.
when and where was this voting? Because I didn't see anything. Like they went straight from the speeches to her saying she was going to count the votes. I'm like, are they voting? That's the kind of thing where if it had been the future setting, then I would think, oh, they have some sort of electronic devices on them where they're voting in the same time as they're giving speeches or instantly after it. But there's no indication of that, so it makes it seem as if they voted before the speeches. So then it's like, why are they bothering to make speeches if they've already voted?
Yeah, you can get things like that when stuff gets cut out.
And this Tracy character continues to establish herself as being boring and really not much to her. Like they have her conversations with her friend about like, oh, I sort of used to not like Simon, but now I don't know, and I like Greg, but then I don't, and then I'm not saying it's unrealistic. There's plenty of teenage girls that act like that, but it's like she's so nothing in terms of her personality. It's kind of hard to understand, other than just her looks, why anybody would be interested in her.
But I mean, can I have some rebuttals, or do you have some more points?
Well, yeah, sure, but I'm trying to think of if there was anything else that I specifically wanted to mention, but because there were a few things I definitely laughed at. I just don't specifically remember the last scene here that we're getting to. It kind of almost did the mustache twirling villain thing at the end, where like I'm gonna get him. It's kind of like, again, a little bit more melodramatic. I think I said in the last episode that it was a little bit more that way, and this was definitely. It was sort of like previously. I think they had made Kappatoo as Simon, because it's confusing when you talk about which one. But in the 1990 thing, made him sort of trying to figure out how to get along and using the wristband to sort of get him out of things. But they hadn't really. This is the first time they really showed him use it for something sort of vindictive, where he was actually trying to like embarrass or not hurt somebody physically, but hurt them in terms of their standing or whatever. And previously, he hadn't really done that. So I think the title "Meantime" is probably appropriated there in terms of where it was the first time you really saw him act in sort of a mean way.
Well, a lot of that was Steve who was doing the things.
Well, he chose this. Or I mean, I don't know whether he chose or not. He may not really know what he was doing, but they implied like that he told him what to do. That he said, "Here's tricks you can do."
Yeah.
He didn't seem to have much power over it. So, and the whirlwind thing was entirely his idea. So,
yeah, that's true.
So it seemed like there was a bit of a different personality. And I don't know if that's just because, well, now he feels more comfortable in this this time, so now he's sort of starting to have fun with it more.
But in the first episode, he did do that thing where he put yogurt all over. Put the yogurt over Midgley.
True.
And all Midgley did was say, "Miss, Simon Cashmere's out of his seat. I can't concentrate."
Yeah. So, but in that case, yeah, I mean, I guess you could say it was similar in that, because in this one, Greg sort of threatens him in the bathroom for no real
exactly. So I think the Midgley one was a bit.
It was a response to something, but I don't know. It seemed like previously that they established him as worrying less about that. He was a little bit more pragmatic, So anyway.
So I would say that the thing with the wristband is that, yes, those things are a little bit silly, where it's like, oh, we're going to sort of like transmute this fuel into a different fuel and things like, but at least it didn't use it as part of the ending, as like where it hinged on the wristband. The fact that it was able to turn mostly because of what Kappatoo said in his speech about the children being treated as second-class citizens. And so they had that, and there was also a nice little detail that, and because these are just like school kids there, but one of them was wearing a Greg rosette, and he had a light clap after after Kappatoo's speech as Simon, and I thought that was just a nice little detail in directing the kids not to just go all crazy and to remember who they're sort of like cheering for, and so like, and then having an appropriate response. So I thought that you got a little bit of character from Tracy, but within the confines of the fact that you might find her a boring guardian, but I thought at least she had a little bit of character in this. In that, and I liked the speech that she had towards Greg at the end. I thought that was well written, where she said that it's not what came over you, it's what came out of you, and then things like that. I thought that was well written, that whole exchange. And then the bit from, I thought there was some good direction. I thought there was some good camera moves in this. Some good zoom outs, and even more than that, some use of a crane or boom in the school hall. But towards the end, if I pause that and try and get the graphic up, towards the end there was a nice shot here with him, and they sort of moved the camera, they sort of tracked the camera around, and he went in, and then there was a nice shot where Simon was talking in the hallway, and then he moves closer to the camera. There was a nice where she was behind. I mean, this is like basic stuff, but a lot of directors don't do it because they shoot coverage rather than like planning out their shots. It was sort of like where she was behind the lectern, and she sort of like the camera either pulled out or zoomed out, depending on whether there was a zoom lens was used or like they sort of tracked it back. So I thought that I would say that this, Jeff, is an episode for the NFs. with the stuff about like the non-violence, and in the future children aren't going to be treated as second-class citizens, and then the environmentalism stuff. I thought that was
that was interesting that he was saying, or that everybody left, that they weren't interested in that, because I don't know how much, obviously, again, things were different in Britain at the time, but I know early 90s in the US there was actually quite a bit of sort of environmental sentiment among high schoolers, that was sort of becoming a big thing. to at least act like you cared about that. So that seems like at least a few would have stuck around and listened to that.
I think it was that he was like technobabble, 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 NT, NT, NT,
Yeah,
NT, and then say, for the atmosphere.
That's one of those cases where I guess in order to keep the pace of the show up, they had to sort of speed that up. Whereas I think it probably would have taken longer for people to get, as irritated or bored by that. There would have at least been a few people sticking around. If nothing else, because they've established that he's popular. So there would have been at least some girls hanging around to listen to him, regardless of what he was saying, that probably would have listened to him no matter how much he babbled on about something. A couple other things that occurred to me while you were talking. One, from the shot of the kids watching the speeches, I think the costume design is good in that, they're having to wear the school uniforms, but a lot of them don't really look like they put much effort into looking good in the uniform. It's like just kind of disheveled, and it's sort of like, well, we have to wear this. So,
well, they were actual school kids.
Yeah. So it's good because they don't come across as if they've been dressed to look perfect by a costume designer.
Yeah. It was like when I was at school. Like you should have worn a tie, but hardly anyone wore a tie. It was just sort of like black trousers, white shirts.
If anything, honestly, would have liked to seen a few kids, a few more that actually did look a little sharper, because I would think there would be some that would have that attitude of no matter what I'm wearing, I want to look good. So they would have put more effort into the looks. But I think it's realistic to have more of them not really seem to care about whether the uniform is straight or tucked in right or anything like that. The other thing I thought of, because it was another one of those, not exactly cringe, but just sort of question mark over my head, was, okay, we established that I didn't particularly care for the computer character and the way he does the impressions and stuff, but I sort of understood why they had him appear that way to the real Simon. What I don't understand is why he would be talking to Kappatoo that way when he's asking him for information, because there's no appeal, like unless that's supposed to be some sort of future character, but I interpreted it as trying to be again one of the like earlier characters from the past that's trying to appeal to the real Simon. So that part was a little bit odd to me. I'm like, unless there's just something in the programming where he's like, I have to keep up this character thing.
Yeah. Or maybe he likes being like that. I mean, it depends how much they take it that way.
That's the kind of thing where I'm like, I would have put in a line if he was going to do that from Kappatoo, like, why are you doing that ridiculous accent? Just give me the information, You don't have to perform for me or something like that. I would have liked there to have been something in response to that if he was going to do it. Of course, I would have preferred to not do it at all, but but again, that's just sort of part of what I was talking about with the goofiness, where it's like you can have things that are funny because they flow with the rest of the plot and are funny in the context, and there's plenty of laughs they've had without having to sort of play up those sort of things. And so I think this show is better when they don't do as much of that.
Right.
The humor comes more from the contextual things, the fish out of water stuff and the misunderstandings, and then some from the technology or other stuff, but I think the more that they try to sort of be goofy and over the top, the less it succeeds.
I mean, there might be a little clue I'm reading into this, but the name of the episode, it's almost like the main plot, the main sort of like arc plot's going on. And in the meantime, we have this little bit of filler.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think, if I remember right. Now I'm forgetting how many episodes we're in, but I think the last one we saw, wasn't it the one that had the confrontation where he was had the truth helmet and all that?
Maybe.
So
I mean, even his plot was a bit filler as well. All he does is go to like a birthday party, and it was just that bit at the end.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking, is that the last episode was almost sort of a recap of the first ones, and then this one seems like you said, it's a little bit sort of filler. So it's sort of like they had we've talked about this before, about TV seasons where there's sort of a lull in the middle, and then they have the stronger finish. And
Yeah.
that kind of seems like what happened with this too. Is like, at least I'm hoping it did, and that this finish is strong. So I don't know, but
I mean, I quite like. I mean, I thought there was a little bit of character for, not Sarah Cotton. That's a different character. Tracy Cotton. That it's also like an intertype relation thing where like I quite like Guardians and like
well, even for Guardians though, I mean, you can have, especially female Guardians in like high school where there's all of these things, different dramas going on, that the parts of her personality being like indecisive and kind of, you know, elitist in some ways, although they established that she got some of that from her mom and she's actually less that way than her mom. But
yeah,
some of that, you know, fits perfectly. I'm just saying that it's like she just sort of repeats herself without any kind of aim. I'm not saying it's unrealistic. I'm just saying she's sort of boring as a character.
Do you think that sometimes the writers, it's like they've sort of like they keep resetting her character arc, where like in a couple of episodes you see her change to get into like Simon, and it's like, oh, we're going to reverse it again, and then sort of like repeat.
She says, now obviously I know that, you know, again, we're dealing with teenagers and they're not necessarily 100% honest in what they talk about their feelings or their changes in their feelings. But I got the impression in the first episode that she actually was into Simon already. There was just sort of this kind of hard to get thing that was going on. Like she didn't really want to admit she liked him because either for status reasons or whatever, like he wasn't the type of boy she's supposed to be into. So they had the sort of that dynamic going on. So in this episode with her saying that she didn't like him before and implying that she only started being interested in him after Kappatoo inhabited him, that seemed a little bit contrary to what they already established. But again, it's not that the character necessarily is being completely honest. You know, they're just kind of, it's kind of spewing out things. So
I mean, to me, it's like, yeah, she fancies him, but she doesn't like his personality because it's like, oh, it's this guy that just likes football, and like she sees him as immature. But now you've got Kappatoo, who's a bit more ENTP-ish in my opinion.
I got the impression in the first episode that was sort of a cover, that she did. It seemed to me, the looks that she gave him and stuff, she did have at least some liking of him. She just didn't really want to admit it, especially in front of others.
Yeah, I mean, you can have those mixed feelings, like where it's like if like she fancies him, but she doesn't like his personality. That's being established, that like she's like you could see from the speech when she initially supported Gregory, that she was like, it was like very Guardian, like the qualities that she went towards. Oh, yeah. Someone who's
that was a nice touch too, to have Greg be like, well, I wasn't here to hear what he said, but let me talk to you about how I'm going to make sure there's more discipline and people you know, getting in trouble for things more. Like it almost seemed like, you know, like how can we make this guy as little popular as possible? But the thing is, at that, it's like obviously they've established that he was popular before that also, so there has to be at least some contingent of the students that were kind of more in agreement with him on that, and kind of do see Simon as a little more goofier, or like not taking it seriously and stuff, you know.
Yeah,
I remember that from high school, that regardless of, you had sort of those contingents of people, and you had those that really did take high school government seriously, like they really cared about it, and then you had those that sort of pretended they did for image reasons. It was like, oh, this is this thing that you're supposed to act like you care about. And then you had the people that treated it as a complete joke, to the, you know, they wanted to mock it or whatever. And then you had like the people that just didn't care at all, like it had no interest and didn't think that, you know, there was any reason to pay any attention to it. So, you know, that's obviously an oversimplification, but you know, you had different sort of groups of, and so again, together with the when did they actually vote thing, It's sort of like if this speech really turned enough people, then they're pretty fickle. But again, it's teenagers, so.
Yeah, I mean, so have you seen enough? So what do you reckon to if you were to sort of like personality type Simon and Kappatoo? Have you? I mean, if you can't settle on a type, if you sort of like narrowed it down to a few types for both of them.
Well, I mean, I think I said they pretty much established that they were both perceiver types of some Simon, because they're definitely neither one seems to be much in the way of future planning in terms of thinking out what they're going to do very well. And I don't know, like I almost say that Kappatoo, the real Kappatoo, seems a little more introverted. He doesn't appear to really seek out people or be energized by them in any particular way. Where it seems like Simon's a little bit more extroverted, like he seems to care more about get more out of the people that he encounters. So that would be just sort of a real quick thing on that. The others, a little bit harder to pigeonhole, even like sensor intuitive type things, because yes, Kappatoo has like, a lot of knowledge about things, but, sensing types can gain a lot of knowledge about things. He doesn't spend a lot of time talking about, the sort of more hypothetical what if type questions, or like the concepts involved in things. Like I think he does mention some things, but it's sort of always in more of the pragmatic context of what it is he's doing or trying to accomplish. So I don't think I can solidly say he comes off for sure as an intuitive type. And the same thing with T and F. That's sometimes, pretty hard to gauge.
Well, to me, he seems ENTP, and like he's even like a little, even like some of the awkward things that he says when he's like talking to the schoolgirls, the teenage girls. He's a bit like he will say things that are a bit ENTP-ish in the way that they
Well, yeah, I mean, you've said that already. I was just saying.
yeah. And you're sort of going off. Yeah,
I was just saying my viewpoint.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But it's still not. I'm not sitting here saying you're wrong about that. I'm just saying I don't feel like there's enough information to come to that conclusion. To me,
yeah, fair enough.
I don't see him as any kind of stereotype of an ENTP, which, on the one hand, is a good thing. It's good to have characters that are well-rounded enough that they don't just come off as being somebody created a stock character of a particular personality type. So
yeah, the reason why it's like, to me, it's just a sort of like an overall impression sort of thing that I get with him, and like where he's, I mean, I know there is that thing where it's like his social field and like everyone is sort of like but it does seem like he said that thing where he said he's not good at the physical stuff and that he's more of an intellectual. And even then, when he was saying, like, he seems to be like rational, or in English, a right witly, in going towards the intellect, and when he interacts with the females, there's an awkwardness there that you can get with. There's a sort of a cringe factor that you can get with ENTP males, where it's hard to sort of put the finger on it. Whereas with Simon, we now start getting into cliches in the fact that he's like really good at sport, and he's sort of like not just good at football, but good at karate and good at cricket. So it depends. I mean, there are people in those sports who are not like an SE Dom, not an extroverted artisan. Anyhow, If I was sort of like lumbered, if I had this cast, I might have been tempted to switch this actor with the actor playing Kappatoo. At least see if he played the part better. But yeah. So, what do you think about? I'll just pause that so that the. Right, Jeff. So, it's a bit of a. So, what do you think of how Nina Mashkalik grew up?
What do I think of how she grew up?
Okay, what do you think of her there?
I don't know.
So okay, fair enough. So she doesn't reach Jeff's seal of approval.
I don't know anything about how she grew up. So
how she ended up, right? Anyhow, so yeah, meantime. So in the meantime, we have a bit of a digression from the main plot. The thing is with this, I'll probably give this an extra point because of the fact that I was in a better mood after watching it. So although that might have just been coincidence, but okay, yeah. So my feeling is that I don't mind all of the stuff with the wristband because, sort of recapping my line of thinking in that because although it was a plot about the PTA, which is like a little bit, it's like way off the. It's off the arc plot. At least they tied it into the thing about, oh, these kids are treated with more respect in the future, and I thought that would appeal to like the school, the audience of about 14-year-olds, 13, 14-year-olds and younger, because Wojtek watched it when he was 10 years old, and oops.
Yeah, we haven't really seen as many adults in the future, so they haven't really demonstrated how equals because they really haven't shown much adult characters.
That's a good point. I just remembered something. Prentice Hancock, who you know from like Doctor Who stories, probably in the 70s, plays Kappatoo's father.
Yeah,
he's the one that comes in and is like extra ENTP-ish.
I mean, I remember the father, but I don't know what Doctor Who stories you're talking about specifically. So,
yeah, it's tricky. It's like various ones in the 70s, usually probably with John Pertwee, I reckon. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So
by name I don't remember. So
yeah.
And when I saw him as you know in those brief scenes when he came in, I didn't recognize him.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just it was almost as if it's like for the plot that they came up with, like for like a PTA election sort of kind of thing. I think it was handled quite well in terms of the speech and how that was set up earlier on. You know, when he was talking about, because my mum said so and all that kind of stuff. And one for the idealists, as I said. But yeah, and it might have just been coincidence that I felt. So I would give it. It's that what you say sometimes, Ben. Oh, just go off your overall enjoyment factor, and so I think I'll give it 7 out of 10 because I felt better after watching it, as I was, and it's sort of hard to put my finger, sort of on why. Maybe it's just sort of like the way we sort of like different things. So for instance, for you, your reaction is the way you react to Tracy as this. Oh, I was just going to say that they are like giving a tiny bit to to her character in that, but her sort of like development over the episodes, it's almost like they reset her in an episode rather than sort of carrying it on. That's sort of like, that could have been, you know, like they would say, like some episodes of a program, like that somebody develops over the episode and then reset it, and it's like that development has been cancelled. And so it's like we had that thing where Simon and Tracy got on well at the party after all of the shenanigans, and then the next time, oh, they're off again. But as you said, that, so I would have liked a continuous arc, but maybe they wanted to keep on having a story about Tracy and Kappatoo, reset it and then do it again in a different context. So maybe they could have arced that a bit more rather than sort of like going like this, going forward. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, that sort of thing.
I felt like the first 4 episodes flowed together really well, and then it seemed like with the 5th one, it was sort of like they stopped a little, and then this one was a little bit kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I think it might be because of the fact that they're adapting a book, and there might not quite be enough material for 7 episodes, and so they put a bit of filler in there. Yeah. So I'll give it 7 out of 10.
I'll give it a 6.
Right, which is fair enough. What did you give? What did we give? Man and Machine about 6 out of 10.
Last week's, yeah.
Yeah. Right then. So I'll end the broadcast. I think are we doing Man and Machine next week? I think so.
Yes, I think it's well. I mean, I hope so. I actually will be out of town next week, but I hopefully I'll be able to still do it next week.
Okay. So am I right in thinking that the next 3 times that we do reviews, we'll be doing the final 3 episodes of
Yes, I believe that's true. Yeah.
Of Man and Machine, and then we'll be going back to Kappatoo.
Right.
Okay, that's the plan, folks.
All right.
That's it.